In 5, 4. Hello, hi, and welcome to another episode of the Emma Gunn Show. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I appreciate you spending your time here. I've got lovely news. I met up with Lindsay Kelk. Lindsay Kelk has been on this podcast before. She's a really good friend of mine. She's a best-selling author, which I like to tell everybody because I'm very proud of her achievements, especially this time around with her new book is fantasy fiction, which is something that she hasn't done before. And I'm hugely proud of her sort of stepping into a new creative space. She comes over to the UK on book tour a couple of times a year usually. Or actually, that's a lie. It's usually once a year. And so we tend to book in a day, or if she's got more time, usually when she's over for several weeks doing a national tour, she'll stay at mine for a night and we'll have an M&S Picky Bits dinner on the sofa whilst Taylor Swift is on the TV in the background. It's a perfect arrangement. It's a perfect relationship. But I saw her yesterday and it was just so nice to catch up with her in the flesh as opposed to over WhatsApp, which is normally how we communicate because we don't do voice notes or phone calls. Well, she doesn't do voice notes or phone calls. I love a voice note and I love a phone call, but Lindsay's all about the text message, and so that's how it rolls. But it was very nice to catch up with her for a lot of reasons, but just to see how A, well she is, B, how wonderfully her book is being received, and also just to kind of, she's one of those people that I sense check my thoughts and feelings with, and to that end I actually started recording this episode and then I thought, oh, I'm not sure you said that right. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with Lindsay, because I don't know as if there is any right way to have this sort of conversation, because the subject matter is so perfectly divisive because everybody has skin in the game. Whether you realize it or not, it somehow impacts you even when it doesn't. And that's the gender, sex, trans debate. And again, probably even couching it in those terms would be offensive to some people. And it is definitely a subject I approach like a landmine. And I'm very nervous about talking about it on the podcast. But I think actually I don't want to be nervous about these things. I am certainly not against anybody who is going through or feels any of those feelings, but rather than that particular thing, which I think can get complicated, and I would rather speak to somebody who has way more knowledge than share my opinion necessarily, is to just talk about the fact that we were saying that it is a lever to divide and conquer. It is the perfect topic. As I said, everybody has skin in the game. Everybody, man or woman, has a perspective on what it is like to be as such. And therefore, and that is that is the foundation of their being. That will be how they are informed about how they see the world. It will inform how they see the world. It's so sort of concrete that the idea that somebody might be experiencing differently seems to be the thing that just is an untenable sort of position for some people to understand. And so we were saying that it used to be that you couldn't bring up politics or religion. Well, there was another one, I forget what it is. Money, I think was one. But now it seems to be this, because it feels as though it's one of those conversations where there is a lack of empathy and understanding, and because of people's starting position. And therefore I can only imagine what it must be like to be in that space, to be someone who is trans, and feel like every day you're having to start the conversation again, because everybody is starting from a completely different point, but a very embedded and entrenched belief that probably is going to take a little time to open up to, or they are going to be completely not open to it at all. So that was something. I wonder what you think about this, because again, I do think it's a subject that I think there's a part of my brain saying, don't publish this. It's just better not to contribute. But I think that in itself isn't helpful. And I would like to be able to participate in a way in these sorts of conversations in a way that would be helpful to those who, I mean, Lindsay is friends with and has had way more conversations with trans men and women than I ever have. So she has a far greater perspective. And just listening to her and just chatting to her about it, I realised how lacking I am in my knowledge about this, because I haven't had enough conversations with people who are trans. And I think that is something that I must change. It really is. Because, I mean, I had Carmen Carrera on the podcast a few years ago, and I sort of dread to listen back to that in case I was clunky, because it's new to me. It's a new subject. Everybody has skin in the game, but it's also a new subject, and you have to ask a lot of questions. But it does seem like a lot of the questions that you might ask if you are new to it are questions that could be quite triggering. So again, just this idea that it is the most perfectly divisive subject, because everybody, as I say, has an opinion already based purely on their lived experience. And it is a difficult thing to do, to say, I'm going to be open to the fact that my lived experience is not the norm and that someone else's might be different. So anyway, we got serious, but then let me move swiftly on to how things weren't particularly serious. So as I said, Lindsay doesn't come over to London very often. One thing that we are very good at doing with each other is sending each other links to things that we want and saying, should I buy this? And the answer will always be yes. I will always validate her desire to buy a pair of sparkly boots that look like something Taylor Swift has worn on stage. And she will always validate my want to buy the faux leather midi skirt from Holland Cooper, which she did last week. And I had perfectly composed in my head, I mean, I've been half writing in my head this feature for my newsletter on my Substack. Please do go to the link in the show notes to subscribe. It's a lot of fun over there. There's lots of great beauty recommendations, fashion talk, and then the weekly newsletter, all free to view and to read. But there is a paywall for some of the stuff that takes me ages. And someone actually messaged me the other day saying, I really want to, because I said in one of the articles, I really want to know what your AM and PM skincare routine is, but can it be on a non-paywall day? And again, I know I've said this on the podcast, but it's tough sometimes because everything that I produce is available. It doesn't cost anything for anyone to consume. And so the first time you start putting things behind a paywall and saying, oh, please, sir, I'd like to get paid for my work, you do get some pushback, and it's hard not to take offense. And so you say, actually, I can sort of see your point. Like I've made you used to this. So I'm just sort of saying, if you don't mind, do that, paying £4 a month. Thanks very much. So anyway, there is a paywall. But only if I've put a huge amount of time and effort. Like if it's taken a few days to put something together, like, you know, I've got bills to pay. I've got to keep a roof over my head, so it's appropriate. Anyway, moving swiftly on. We were talking about, I'd composed in my head this podcast. I composed in my head the newsletter, and I was going to say how I was resisting the urge to buy a pop of Burgundy. YouTube, people watching on YouTube will be laughing at this point. Because every season you need something new. And this season there's been a real push on Burgundy. You go into any high street store, Burgundy everywhere. So many drops to drink. It's just all over the place. And I saw someone else on Substack, and I can't find it, or I don't know if it was Substack or Instagram. Someone had written something like saying, you don't need the pop of Burgundy. And I thought, you know what? That's absolutely true. You really, really don't. And there's a beautiful Albury jumper, and I love the brand Albury, and it's made out of recycled materials and sustainable materials and some wool. So it's like, it's very hard wearing, but it's also really good quality. And it's in this beautiful chocolate brown. And I just thought, you know what? That chocolate brown is so much more universal and so much more timeless than a pop of Burgundy. So up yours, capitalism and consumerism. I'm not going to buy Burgundy, whatever, because I don't need it. And you're telling me I need it. And now I think I need it. But what you don't know is I actually know that I don't need it. But I know that you're trying to make me think that I need it. But I'm going to reject that impulse. Until Lindsay and I went into Zara and we looked at this jumper and she was like, oh, that would look so good on you. And I couldn't argue with her. I could not argue with her. I think it looks nice. So there we go. I bought the Burgundy jumper. I am a hypocrite. And I said this in my column because I basically had to, because I had decided to write my column after I saw Lindsay to include the fact that I'd seen her. I had to then admit that I was a huge hypocrite who had bought a pop of Burgundy despite saying that I wasn't going to. But with that said, It does seem to work with my colouring, so I think I'll wear it more than just this year. And it's also really soft and cosy and comfortable and snuggly, which is very nice. So there's that. The other thing that I wanted to mention about my trip into London was that I bumped into a really nice lady called Katrin, I think she said. I was coming back from seeing Lindsay, and I was a little bit stressed because Lindsay and I met in Sloane Square and the trains weren't running to Victoria. So the route for me to get to Lindsay was quite laborious. I had to go into London Bridge. I could have got the tube, but I hate getting the tube if I don't have to, unless it's the District line or the Circle line, because they're kind of higher up. So I walked over the London Bridge to Monument, and then I got the tube down to Sloane Square and I met Lindsay. And so we sort of spent a few hours together, and I said, look, it's going to get dark, and I'm of an age now where I don't like to be out if it's dark. And the trains are a little bit haywire today, and I just don't want to get stranded anymore, have a long wait. And so I headed off on the tube, and when I got down to Sloane Square, a lovely lady, Katrin, came over to me and said hello and said that she enjoyed my content, which was like the biggest compliment ever. And she had her lovely little daughter with her who had this brilliant little ensemble on, which I immediately, she had these amazing leopard print socks, and I was like, I'm going to go and find those socks. Apparently they're from Tesco, so I'm going to go and find those. But it was just a very nice moment, and I wanted to mention that just in case Katrin is listening, because it was really nice to meet her. And I was so pleased that she came up and said hello, because funnily enough, I think weirdly Lindsay's the common denominator here. We had coffee in Liberty, the cafe at Liberty, a lot earlier on in the week, and when I got home I had a DM from someone saying, I was sitting next to you in Liberty and I didn't want to come and interrupt. I was like, you should have come and interrupt, we would have loved to have had a chat. But anyway, it was just very nice. It was really sweet to meet two people who said such nice things. And particularly the conversation I had with Katrin, because it was face to face and we were killing time waiting for the train, where it's just very nice to hear someone say, I really enjoy your content. I mean, what a gorgeous thing. In fact, Pedro Pascal is in London at the moment, and he was at the Dover restaurant, which is owned by my friend Ruby Hammer's husband. And I saw something on TikTok. I think someone had filmed him, which I don't think you're supposed to do, but there we go, had filmed him in the Dover. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what would I say if I saw Pedro Pascal? I wouldn't tell him about all the impure thoughts I've had about him, because I think that's inappropriate and it's none of his business, to be honest. But I think I would just say, I really like it when you're on my TV. The end. And then I'd do a little cutesy face and spin on my heel and fall over probably. But I just think that would be, what would I say to someone who I really like? I love him in The Mandalorian. I loved him in The Rest. What is it? The Rest Is Us? No. Yes, The Rest of Us. Oh, I can't remember what the show's called now. How terrible. I was too busy concentrating on Pedro Pascal being absolutely amazing. He's just a very beautiful man. Great. I mean, I watched Narcos. I watched the whole of Narcos just for him. And it was worth it for that scene in the first series where you see him with his trousers off. But he is just a very handsome man. He also seems like he's great fun. And I'm sure that if I said, I really like it when you're on my TV, I think he would get the compliment. I remember listening to RuPaul's podcast years ago. And Ru, obviously, like gargantuanly galaxy-wide famous, as such a huge star. And it must be quite confronting if I turned around and saw RuPaul, I think I would probably do a little scream and like I'd have to hold on to something to keep me upright. And Ru was saying that obviously when you're the recipient of that, it can sometimes be like, how do you accept it? How do you take it in? How do you, because it's kind of this jarring pull from other people's experience. And Ru was saying that it would just be really cool if someone gave her the thumbs up. And I thought, I now just really want to see RuPaul to talk about, to just give him the thumbs up and be like, yeah, I really like what you do. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because I think, and I've said this before, and actually I was going to write a piece for my Substack and I just didn't know if it was a good idea. So tell me what you think. But I was going to write a Substack about my worst celebrity interviews, because been a journalist now for 25 years and I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities, everybody from, like, without being unkind, but like public perception, low rent reality TV stars, right up to Oscar winners, Grammy winners, Emmy winners, the lot. So it's been a real spectrum, if you like. And I definitely have screwed up some of those interviews. And the reason why I wanted to write the feature was because I'm not blaming the celebrity. I am 100% putting all of the blame at my door. I was going to talk about the times when I know I screwed up. The most famous, and the one that if I wake up in the middle of the night, I will think about it, is Sarah Michelle Gellar, the other triple barrel. I will think about the interview I did with Sarah Michelle Gellar and how it just didn't go well. There's something in the air was not right. And then everything I said was wrong. And I knew it was what I had done. And so I might write that feature, but then I don't want editors to read it and think, well, I'll never ask her to do an interview again. But the thing about it is it's the kind of mistakes that you make them once and you never make them again as an interviewer. So with Sarah Michelle Gellar, we were she was opening the Harrods sale. I think I was one of many people who was coming through the door. It's very, very tough when the sort of topic that you're talking to that person about is a shop reducing their stock, and it's not about a television show or a film or a project. And so I think by the time I got to her, she was perhaps a little bit fatigued by the type of questioning, and then I just came in and did much the same, and then sort of seemed and was a little bit too familiar. And that was the mistake that I made, because I let the professional guard down. I used to time my commute home on a Friday. This must have been when I was young, because I was still living at my parents' house. I used to time my commute home on a Friday. I was working though, I was in gainful employment. Back from London, I'd race home, out of my clothes, into like my slobby clothes / pajamas, and then I would time Sky would go on because Buffy was on at 8 and Angel was on at 9. The TV would go on, and I would time like flying onto the couch, like throwing myself onto the couch with the scream of the guitar of the intro of the Buffy theme tune. If you know, you absolutely know what I'm talking about. And then you'd be like, da, 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 da. And you'd get so excited, and I would get so excited. And I think that I hadn't realized how much I enjoyed Buffy, because I was never a Buffy super fan. Like, I know people who are Buffy super fans. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I loved Angel, and I thought David Boreanaz, there was a spell where I thought he was the greatest man on earth who possibly lived, and it'd be great if he was my boyfriend. But I absolutely I think I got razzle-dazzled by Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I wasn't prepared for that, because I didn't think I loved Buffy that much. I thought I loved the show, and I thought, oh God, I've been interviewing celebrities for years, I'll be fine. And I just didn't quite know how to engage with her as a human being. I engaged with her as if she was Buffy, and that was all on me. But please do let me know if you ever used to literally fly onto the sofa with a snack to the music, to a TV show, because if I nailed it, if I got it right, if I didn't stick the landing, I was so happy. I was just like, yes, this is great. And I used to love Buffy. I really did. And it's so sad, actually, to hear that it wasn't a pleasant experience for many of the cast members. Anyway, that's a bit of a downer, so let's not talk about that. But anyway, do you think I should write that feature? Or do you think that editors would read it and think, well, I'm never going to put her in front of a celebrity / famous person / royalty again? Because I don't want to sabotage my career. That would be absolutely, utterly and completely rubbish. Now, to continue on something else that happened this week, I don't want to give away too much, because this is a feature that one of my friends is writing. So the brilliant journalist Hannah Betts, who, oh gosh, she was just when I started out in the beauty industry and I first started going to events, I would see Hannah Betts, and Hannah Betts is a class act, and Hannah Betts is quite simply amazing. But she put something on her Substack this week. She's got a brilliant Substack. You must go over and subscribe. I'll put the link in the show notes. She posted something, and it was a journo request, just saying, does anybody have any thoughts and feelings about coaching? And I got in touch with her, and I assume we're going to have a conversation at some point this week. But it was essentially and if you're on YouTube, you'll see that I'm looking at my phone to see if I can find the message. She posted about the sort of the phenomenon of coaching. So it's for a broadsheet, and I got back to her, and I won't give the details of what she's writing because obviously she's writing it and I want you to read her feature. But I replied because I realized I had very strong thoughts and feelings about this sort of culture of coaching. And it's sort of merged into a few other things that have happened recently that's made me think, oh, okay, I think this is the trend. And coaching is just almost like a symptom of the bigger picture, if you like. And because essentially I would say, and I think you've probably observed this too because you're smart, that there has been an absolute explosion in coaching culture. So people are hiring coaches for all sorts. Now, back in the day, let's think about it. What did we used to hire coaches for? Really, the only thing we would hire coaches for was fitness. Business coaching has been going on for years, but it was quite niche. Now it's quite mainstream. Divorce coaching, other type like life coaches, which I mean, what even is that? And the other thing that we used to seek coaching for was dieting. And I would say that as much as you might call them programs or subscription services or however you might plans or whatever programs, I think things like Weight Watchers, Slimming World, all of those things are essentially a coaching mechanism, particularly I would say Weight Watchers and Slimming World, because they required you to be physically present once a week, and you would be there with somebody, a leader, a supporter, somebody who had been through it and could offer you guidance as you encountered your own struggles. Now, or to encourage you along the way. And I'm not saying that coaching is necessarily a bad thing, because I think there is a space for coaching. And I think that even though I do believe there are bad coaches out there, for every bad coach, for every 10 bad coaches, there will be one very, very good coach. But I have a perspective on it as somebody who has platformed a lot of coaches over the years on this podcast. And I would say that it's fair for me to come to this conclusion based on A, the conversations, and B, the fact that prior to my conversations with these people, I have usually consumed a huge amount of their content, be it a book, be it a website, their social media channels, whatever it is that they might be putting out into the world to let people know, hey, I'm a coach and I can help you. And I started to feel a little bit iffy about it a few years ago. And I do think that coaching experienced an explosion during lockdown. I think a lot of people felt lost and a lot of people had time on their hands that they felt that they should be using to maximize their efficiency. And I think the explosion of podcasting and its tone in terms of personal development and self-help really emphasized that, really maximized that, and really kind of amplified that sense of feeling. It's almost as though COVID for a lot of people was like the period between Christmas and New Year, where you think, well, I'm going to get organized in those 3 or 4 days. And this sort of expanse of time that was a little bit uncertain, a little bit, we knew it was going to be finite, but how much, allowed us to kind of lean into things that we don't normally have the bandwidth for. And I think that's when coaching really was just exploded. And I think lots of different types of coaches have appeared. Like I said, divorce coaching, life coaching. Life coaching for me is the one that I think is a little bit, well, I don't want to get into, I think you probably guessed, I don't really approve, I don't really rate it. With that said, I'm sure that there are coaches there are coachees who have had brilliant experiences with a coach. And so they're probably, you might be listening to this thinking, actually, Emma, I think you're coming at this from a really negative perspective. It can be really helpful. I do think that there is scope for it to be helpful. But I also think that signing up to a coach is far less of an admission of where you might be that you don't want to be than actually signing up for perhaps therapy with a licensed, insured mental health professional. And so I think coaching has become this space sort of adjacent, let's call it therapy adjacent, sort of expert adjacent, because the majority of the time coaches are not experts. Sorry to say it. And what I've observed through a lot of the interviews that I've done, I feel really guilty saying this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see my eyes darting around because I'm like, do I say it? Do I? I've observed that a lot of people who become coaches are people who have gone on an incredible journey and have turned their lives around, for which they should feel really proud. It's not easy to be in a bad place, as it were, and get yourself into a good place. It's tough. I would say that I did it. I was struggling with depression and anxiety. My mental health was in the absolute crapper. I also had absolutely no boundaries with people, so I had felt rinsed by people in my life. I felt completely depleted, and building myself back up was not an easy task. I was very lucky because my first therapist that I ever sat with was a great fit, and we worked together for 18 months. And at no point was I given homework. At no point was I told what to do. I was given the space and the time and the freedom within our sessions to say what I was really feeling, and to actually kind of look at that and examine it. Was it real? How could I change it? What had I done that had led me to those feelings? And so even though I had support, it was very gentle. It was very skillful because my therapist had gone to school and had done all of the training. But it was the gentle nudging to allow me to see what I needed to do and how I needed to change, and what boundaries I needed to put in place, and to allow me to see my past through a new lens, i.e. basically not seeing some of the things that happened in my past as normal, and realizing that some of them have been good and some of them have been bad. But all of the work ultimately came down to me. We would have these sessions, something would be opened up, and I would go away, and my brain would percolate, and that was how the growth and the development and the changes occurred. But what I think happens with coaching, which is different, is it's sign up to this and follow this, do this homework. And just because something has worked for the coach, it doesn't necessarily mean it will translate. And what I find really vile about this particular industry is that if you are someone who signs up for coaching and it doesn't work with you, or it doesn't chime for you, or you don't get the results that you want, you won't be met with, okay, let's try a different tack. The response that most of you will get, and most of you may have had, and I had this with a coach, and I am still really embarrassed about this because I signed up with a business coach, and it was really because I was overwhelmed and I wanted to kind of get rid of all the dead weight and move forward and become more efficient. And the first session was, let's improve your LinkedIn profile. And that was when I knew I'd been scammed. And it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. But when I said, look, this isn't what I signed up for, the response was, you're a difficult client, you're a difficult customer. And I've spoken to numerous other people who have gone because they have felt really bad, and they've thought a life coach might be what I need, because actually admitting that you need therapy isn't scary, but it can be scary. And they have had very similar experiences of, well, I don't feel any better. I just feel like I've just got more work to do and I feel worse about myself. And the response has been, you're just not in the right place for this course yet, but do come back. And it's like, I don't want to come back. What are you talking about? So coaching, I think, and again, really fascinated to hear your thoughts on this, is something I'm likely, to be honest, I will roll my eyes or give a bit of a if I'm approached about a life coach. And to be honest, I think the amount of life coaches who approach me to be on the podcast, not because no one ever says, look, I went on this journey. I think that some of the stuff that I learned can really help others. So I'd just like a platform to share it on. And I can tell you what they are. And if you think that we could have a decent conversation that might help your listeners, that would be great. It's never that. It's so-and-so transformed their life and would like to talk about these 3 things and get people to basically buy their course. And so it's an immediate delete from me, because I just don't want to platform somebody who is out for the gain of, well, the financial gain, as opposed to ultimately helping people. Yes, people need to be paid for their work, but if you just have to be honest about what you're selling them. And that's what I think the coaching industry gets wrong. Admittedly, there might be coaches listening to this who are thinking, Emma, you've got this so wrong. And as I said, there are good coaches and there are bad coaches. And unfortunately, I see a lot of bad coaches who are seeking fame and notoriety by saying the same thing, which is fairly flipping obvious, and that you will come to in your own therapy, if you work with a therapist, that you won't need to like somebody else's meme saying it to make you feel better. And I think that, again, we could get into a whole conversation about how I think coaching has become, or this sort of self-help space has become really performative. I see people online who are sharing the same very weak sort of memes about self-help, and the likes are in the thousands and the shares, and it's like, yeah, and it's almost like, if you like that and if you share it, it doesn't mean you've done the work. It does not mean that you're a better person. If you share a post about being kind, it does not mean that you're not a dick sometimes. And I just think that gets slightly forgotten. And for me, that's why you will have felt, I'm sure, the way I have pulled back hugely from the interview space, because the majority of people I'm speaking to, or who want to be platformed right now, we're in this massive bubble. It will, of course, burst, as all bubbles do, but we are in this bubble where a lot of people are trying to say how great their life is and how much they can help you. And I can't even begin to talk about the parenting space. And I've talked to mum friends of mine, and I said I was watching followed someone who's basically like a mum inspo account, and everything she said, like, surely it's pretty obvious. Like, it's okay to want to throttle your kids. It doesn't mean you don't love them, right? Like, come on, you don't need to like someone telling you that. Like, it's obvious, isn't it? And they were like, yeah, but it just makes you feel a little bit better to know someone else has gone through it. And I suppose there's that. But I have also I know of coaches who talk about helping people overcome anxiety, for example. Or there's one in particular I can think of who, and look, lovely person, but selling a course on like how to overcome anxiety, but then privately really struggling with anxiety still. And I just sort of think, if you aren't over it yourself, maybe you shouldn't be taking people's cash to help them with it. I don't know. That's how I feel. That's why you've probably heard me over the years be really tentative about talking about weight loss, because there's a part of me that thinks I could still screw this up. There's a part I could still gain all the weight back. That's been my experience. My muscle memory is that I will gain my weight back, even though my rational mind says, you've done so much work. You have done so much work. It would be very unlikely. And even if you did gain some back, you know exactly how to lose it again. But there's a part of me that doesn't want to definitively talk about weight loss in absolute terms, because I don't want to appear as though I won't break again, or I won't relapse again, or I won't struggle again, because I just think that's the journey of life. And I just don't think damn it, I've just lost the game of life. I've got to start again. If you know, you know. I just don't want to, I don't know. It's not like getting a qualification where you get it at the end and then it's handed to you and it's a full stop. Like, everything is a work in progress, and accepting that some of your successes will fall back a little bit. I keep using the word relapse. That's probably the wrong one, but that everything has ups and downs, peaks and troughs, and there are cycles. And therefore, I don't want to ever say anything too absolutely, because part of that whole thing would be to ignore the fact and ignore the bigger picture that it might change. Things might change. Things that are beyond your control might change. And therefore, the most important thing is that on the way to that success that you achieved, you've made a note of all of the things that you did, of all of the changes that you made, so that when the time comes and you might need them again, they're there for you. And so that's why I just find coaching really scummy. Sorry. There are good coaches, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure of it. And I'm sure many of you listening either are in that space or have used a coach and have found it really invaluable. But I just worry that it's moving people away from their own agency to lean on a coach when perhaps it would be a better longer term solution to come to those realizations yourself. And again, I mentioned at the beginning of this rant about diet culture and about dieting. Dieting is a coach, but they're there for you when you fail. And I suppose, using that as a parallel, obviously with my own biases, I would say that actually those coaches, or that particular type of coach, is invested in you needing them multiple times, because that's how you are a great customer, because you keep coming back, you're a repeat customer. And for me personally, I use lots of different diets as a coach or as a crutch to help me lose weight, which meant that I never addressed the real problem, which was, you don't know how to eat moderately normally. I knew how to restrict and I knew how to overeat. I didn't know how to do the thing in the middle. And once I saw that, which no diet was ever going to teach me, no Weight Watchers certainly weren't going to teach me that. Once I took a step back and realized that, I could bin Weight Watchers and all of the diets and focus on what I really needed to learn. And that ended up being quite a quick journey. And as you know, if you've been here for a while, all of the stuff that I learned along the way has stuck. Touch wood, fingers crossed. There have been ups and downs, but here we are. So coaching I find very interesting. And again, I know that you guys are really thoughtful. I know that you guys are really intelligent. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Email me at office@emmaguns.com. And as soon as Hannah's piece is live, I will share the link to that, because I know it's going to be in one of the broadsheets. I don't know which one, but I think it will be really fascinating. She's an excellent journalist, and however she approaches this, it will be far more, it will be better rounded than this, because obviously I have a position and I have an opinion, whilst being open to the fact that there is good in it. My experience is that the majority of it is a bit skanky, and I don't care for it, and I won't recommend it. And I would never recommend anything to you that I thought would do you harm, or that would take money out of your wallet that you didn't need to spend. And so coaching, unfortunately, based on the majority of the experiences I have had, have made me go, nope, bye. I'm not interested. So there we go. Let's chat about that. Why don't you get in touch with me? office@emmaguns.com. DM me on Instagram, where I'm Emma Guns. You can also follow me on Substack, and actually I'll probably write a little thing about this. And I've written a few other articles. There's been more comments on the articles I've written on Substack than there have been in the Facebook group, which is why if you are in the Facebook group, you will have seen absolutely no activity, because I've kind of binned it, because it just seemed that nobody was really really participating. And who was it who said, oh, there's a brilliant follower, oh, I've forgotten her name, but she said, yeah, the crack wasn't there, was it? It was just, there was just no real vibe in the Facebook group. But in Substack, the comments are really nice. So please do go over there, start conversation. I always see them, but so do other readers, so do other listeners. And so it's quite nice to sort of see the conversation there. I also think it's a nicer interface than Facebook. And also if you're on Facebook, you get distracted by, I don't know, things that are going on in your personal Facebook as opposed to the groups that you follow. So I'll put the link to my Substack in the show notes, and it would be fabulous if you went over there. There are a few really popular articles I posted last week. One was about the best budget beauty buys under £15. I wrote that one first thing on a Saturday morning, which isn't when I really want to be working, but I woke up, and the thing about having a creative brain is that it just sort of, something will suddenly start ticking in the background, and all of a sudden it's like, I want to come out, and then you're helpless. And then funnily enough, on Saturday morning last weekend, I woke up and wrote the feature about the 5 timeless additions you can make to your wardrobe that don't include a pop of burgundy. Again, YouTube, I'm wearing the burgundy jumper, but you get the gist. So go and have a look at those. See if you agree with me. There are some brilliant fashion items. There's the Albury jumper that I've already mentioned, the one in chocolate brown, which I think is just going to be glorious and lush and divine. And what else is in there? Oh God, there are so many other bits. There's the boots I got from John Lewis that are just like, go with anything, elevate any look. I did a reel on those, and a few other bits and pieces. Oh, the patch pocket jeans from River Island that I bought, but also the M&S ones. Lindsay got the M&S ones and said they're glorious, and now I feel like maybe I need to go and try some of them. I just couldn't find them. Could not find them in any M&S anywhere, and they're not online. So that was that. And I don't want to buy multiples to try on at home and send back, because as convenient as that is, you've got to be aware of that carbon footprint of just like basically trying on things in your house. Like it's costing someone money, and if it's not costing me money, who's it costing money? So I want to go and try them on in store, even though most changing rooms that I've been into recently are so filthy and smelly. Like, please get a Roomba and just bob it. I mean, Zara could do with an army of Roombas at night. Just leave 10 Roombas on, shut that door and leave them on, because the dust bunnies the last time I was in Zara were actually offensive. But that's a whole other thing. Anyway, thank you for spending this time with me, whether it has been in your AirPods or headphones, or whether it has been on YouTube. It's a pleasure to spend this time with you. I love chatting to you. And I really do want to know what you think about everything that I've talked about, because I've sort of opened up a few cans of worms in this episode. Not deliberately. I'm not trying to be controversial, but I am trying to be a little less middle of the road and safe and put something out there, because if I start talking about something and you share your experiences with me, then I will learn, and my opinions and my knowledge will only grow. And I think by not talking about things, sometimes we are limiting ourselves from the experience of learning and gaining knowledge. And so hopefully by talking about the things that I've spoken about in this episode, I'll get some messages and I'll be able to move my thoughts and feelings on and see other perspectives, which would make me really happy. So don't be shy. office@emmaguns.com, @emmaguns on Instagram, or go to my Substack and join the chat. Thank you so much for listening or for watching. I will see you on the next one.